Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Cole. It's Sunday evening, June 22nd. We're going to go ahead and make this the Week 8 announcement for Political Science 1013 for the summer term 2025 on the first 7-week schedule. Everyone, this will be the last announcement. Other things being equal, I don't plan on doing another one. We're at the end of the term very quickly. Most of you all will be seeing this Monday the 23rd. We'll be doing our discussion 5 Monday and Tuesday the 23rd and 24th. Term papers, if you are doing one, will be due Thursday the 26th, and the final exam will be available all day Friday the 27th. And then we will take the weekend to look at the term papers, compile the grades, and grades are to be in Monday the 30th. Everyone, I contacted 3 people. All 3 of those people have 2 tests to make up, I believe. So please contact me about that. You're going to need to make those exams up to get through the course successfully. It can be done after the final exam. It could be done conceivably first thing in the morning on the 30th, although that might be cutting it a little close. So please contact me about that. You know who you are, and I'll be happy to open those exams for you whenever you can take them. All right, everybody, just a few things. We had talked a bit about current events last time, and there have been more. The couple who was killed in Washington, D.C. a month ago now, I made a mistake, and I like to get these things straightened out. Off the top of my head, I had described them as pro-Israeli activists. They really were employees of the Israeli embassy. One was an American, and the other had dual citizenship, German and Israeli. They were engaged to be married. So that was quite a tragic circumstance. And then the last weekend, of course, we had the episode in Minnesota with one former member of the legislature killed and another very seriously injured. Both 2 couples, one couple was killed, and both members of the other couple were very badly injured. So violence in politics continues to be a concern. Now, of course, everybody, just yesterday, we had the military intervention in Iran. B-2 bombers dropping the so-called bunker buster missiles, 10 or 15 of them all together, I believe. These are missiles that can burrow underground and detonate quite a large payload. The objective was to destroy insofar as possible the Iranian government's capacity to develop a nuclear weapon. And so everyone is waiting pensively to see what will follow from this, whether there will be any retaliation by Iran. It's expected there quite well could be. And then we'll have to see what further military action, if any, the United States would take on top of that. The president spoke very briefly, along with the Vice President, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, for just a couple of minutes last night, Saturday night, just after 9 p.m. our time. So we're going to be watching very closely how all that will unfold over the next few days. Now then, everybody, what I need to do in the remaining time, I wanted to talk just a few minutes about Unit 8 on the United States Congress, and then very quickly mention those 4 articles you've been asked to read. And once again, everybody, please try those links and contact me if there's any difficulty with them. I'll do whatever I need to do to get that material to you. But the exam is not until Friday. Please don't wait till the last minute to try to access those links. I think they all should work. If they do not, contact me, and I'll try to get that material to you. I'm sure I'll be able to, but please don't leave it for the last minute. Everybody, I don't know how closely you've been paying attention. I send out a message with supplementary material for each unit. And those will be entitled the Unit 7 links and the Unit 8 links for the final exam material. It would be a good idea for you to take a close look at the message that's marked Unit 8 links that's on Congress. Those instructions will take you through Representative Lucas's website and also the website of the House Agriculture Committee. And that will help to illustrate for you some of the points I try to make in the class notes for Unit 8. So let's talk about those class notes for, just a moment. Now we say there are two sides to the career of a member of Congress. There's the career in the halls of Congress in Washington, D.C., and then there's the career back home, the member's relationship with the member's constituents. The idea of in Washington versus at home comes from political scientist Richard Fenno, I believe, in his book Home Style. Professor Fenno's dead now. His research goes back several decades, but it's worth touching upon very briefly in the class notes, as I do, and you'll notice that as you go through those class notes. So at home versus in Washington, D.C. We take the home side first. The first thing we do in the class notes, everybody, is talk a bit about the composition of Congress, what kind of people do and do not serve in Congress, and why it's disproportionately made up of white males, although not so disproportionately as it would have been decades ago. I then try to go through each of the members of the Oklahoma House delegation and look at their districts. Okay? In addition to that, we go through the members from the Oklahoma Panhandle and the states surrounding the Panhandle: Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, and Kansas, as well as Oklahoma, because everyone needs to know who their representatives in Congress are. Especially your House member. It's a good idea to know who your senators are too. If you ever need to contact the office of a member of Congress, you more than likely will start out with your House member. Okay. And that might be in the case of any difficulty you have with a bureaucratic unit of the federal government that you cannot resolve any other way. So that's kind of important to know. But we do look at some detail at all the House members from Oklahoma. Their districts do differ from one from the other. We have a couple who principally represent Oklahoma City and Tulsa, respectively. Then we have others whose districts are more far-flung. Representative Lucas's district would be a very, very good example of that. It goes all the way from out here in the Panhandle to the outskirts of Tulsa and Oklahoma City. So that poses him some problems that other members would not face. Now, when it comes to getting elected, it's worth stressing that members do this largely on their own. They're competing with each other in party primaries for the right to use that party brand name in the general election, shall we say. Now, it's worth noting, of course, there are far more House members than senators. So the approach I take in the class notes is to discuss House members and then note how it is that senators may differ in the challenges that they face. Okay. It's also worth noting that most all of them have safe seats these days. Few of their districts out of the 435 are competitive Republican versus Democrat, so that they might possibly go either way at election time. That's probably true of no more than 50 or so out of the 435, although that will vary according to the political conditions at the time of the election. Okay. Members largely are responsible for raising their own money, putting their own campaigns together. Okay. It's completely up to the voters in the party primaries who will represent the party in the general election. So you might say it's sort of a free-for-all when there is an open or competitive seat, which is a relatively small fraction of the time. Now, turnover in the House of Representatives from one term to the next is pretty limited. Over the course of a decade, there will be a good bit of turnover. But over any 1-2 year term, from one election to the next, it wouldn't be unusual to see all of them returning except for, maybe 20, 30, or 40 of them out of the 435. Generally, they're quite safe once they won a term and maybe been reelected once. They're quite safe at that point for about a decade, at which point any number of things may happen. They may just not want to do it anymore. They could run for higher office, like governor or senator in their state, or they could make a political mistake that leaves them open to a challenger. And very often these days, everybody, that will happen in the party primary rather than the general election, because most of those districts are safe for one party or the other. So if you win the primary, that could be tantamount to election in the general election, because you're liable to have a very weak opponent in the general if your district has been stacked in such a way as to make it safe for one party versus the other. Very important to note that there are things they do to exaggerate their advantage as an incumbent running for re-election. Things they can do for their district and for individuals in their district. We use the terms casework or constituent service and pork barrel spending. Okay. Both are they're two sides of the same coin. You can look at pork barrel as large-scale constituency service. Things that you might do in the way of spending projects for the district as a whole, or one or another city or community within it, so you can brag to the voters that you have brought some of their taxpayers' money back home for the benefit of the district. Okay. Then one-on-one, one constituent or family at a time, constituent service deals with problems constituents may encounter with bureaucratic units of the federal government that they have difficulty resolving simply by directly contacting that bureaucratic agency. And at that point, the House member, or more likely it'll be the staff, practically speaking, rather than the member him or herself, will try to intervene. And if they can intervene successfully, that then is a feather in the member's cap. Word of that spreads by word of mouth. And if you do a good bit of that type of work, you can bolster your image and your chance for re-election, setting aside the controversial political issues of the day and partisanship, Republican versus Democrat. So they put a great deal of time, effort, and resources into doing that kind of thing. Looking at the Washington, D.C. side, okay, we look at the leadership positions in the House and the Senate, most notably that of Speaker of the House, the Speaker being the most powerful single individual in the congressional leadership, presiding officer of the House, and leader of his or her party in the House of Representatives. The leadership positions in the Senate are important, but perhaps not as crucial, because in the Senate, by tradition, debate is unlimited, so everyone can expect to get their 2 cents worth. It's more limited in the House of Representatives. Okay. There'll be a rule for each bill that comes to the floor limiting debate. And we talk about some of the power and influence that the Speaker in particular can wield. We then go on to look at the committee and subcommittee system. This parallels the structure of the federal bureaucracy. For instance, for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, there's an agriculture committee in both the House and the Senate. So it pretty much parallels the structure of the bureaucracy. There are certain committees that have broader responsibilities than that. We have the Senate Finance Committee and the House Ways and Means Committee. Those are the taxation committees of Congress. Then the appropriations committees in both chambers, which are responsible for budgeting. For about a generation or more, there's been a budget committee in each chamber to try to bring the budget into balance insofar as possible, although it's beyond their power to avert budget deficits, which we continue to run. There are rules committees in both, but the House Rules Committee is especially important because debate is limited in the House, and so a rule has to be passed to limit debate and amendments on every bill that comes to the floor. Regular order refers to the process by which a bill is assigned first to a subcommittee, then to a full committee, of which that subcommittee is a part, and then from the committee onto the floor of the House and the Senate. In the House, there's the intervening step of the House Rules Committee, which has to pass that rule for each bill before it goes to the floor. And then the idea is they each have to pass the bill in exactly the same form. If there's any discrepancy, it will go to a House-Senate conference committee, which may often be the case, especially on a big, complicated bill. Now, it's worth noting on the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, to the best of my understanding, best of my knowledge, they are desperate to avoid having that bill go to a House-Senate conference committee. The contents of that bill are going to be negotiated between the White House and the Republican leadership in Congress, and that bill will go directly to the floor of the House and Senate, and we'll see whether or not it will pass, or in what form. Regular order means the process by which it goes through subcommittee, full committee to the floor in the House and Senate, with the Rules Committee in the House weighing in, and then the conference committee at the end of the process if necessary. One point we try to make in the notes is that, as with the One Big Beautiful Bill, these days they very often bypass regular order, especially on high-stakes bills like the budget or the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Okay. Many people feel that the body would operate much better and be a lot closer to fulfilling its duties under the Constitution if they more often stuck to regular order. But the fact that they're so evenly divided and polarized in both the House and the Senate sort of dictates that often these days regular order will stall out. And to get anything done, they have to bypass regular order, as I expect they will do with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Among other things we mentioned in the class notes are the United States Senate tradition of the filibuster, which at this time means that any member may hold up the business of the Senate unless 60 votes can be had to break the filibuster, which means in effect you have to have 60 votes to pass a bill these days. We talk a good deal about the budget process and the reconciliation process. Quite often, the past couple of decades, we have been unable to pass the budget on time. We will pass a series of continuing resolutions to keep the government funded, and then a budget may finally be passed 6 months later than it really was supposed to, after the start of the fiscal year and when we're halfway through the fiscal year. Okay, so that's another reflection of the difficulties that Congress has encountered these past few couple of decades. The reconciliation procedure is a way of bypassing the filibuster. Okay. The budget cannot be filibustered. That's a move that the Senate made in recent years. Any measure that's deemed to be budgetary may not be filibustered. And the process of considering budgetary items is called reconciliation. It very often is up to the Senate parliamentarian, who's elected by the body as a whole, to make a ruling over whether a particular matter is budgetary or not, so that it may be passed without being subject to the filibuster. The filibuster is under pressure. It's been a long-standing tradition of the Senate, but many people think that it's on the verge of being dispensed with, which would cause a lot of gnashing of teeth and wringing of hands, because people would say it would erode what makes the Senate distinctive and different from the House of Representatives. Well, as we go through those class notes to the end, we talk about the views of the great British statesman Edmund Burke about whether the member ought to be a trustee or a delegate. For better or worse, most of the time these days they behave like delegates, whereas Edmund Burke would have preferred that they be trustees, or at least hold out to act that way at least some of the time. Be sure you understand the distinction that Edmund Burke makes. We look at a couple of PowerPoint slides that were produced to illustrate the typical working day of a member of Congress. And notice how much time they spend on fundraising. That's one of the frustrating things for members of Congress these days. There are any number of members recently who have served a short time, just a couple of terms, and then quit. One reason is they get fed up with the constant need for fundraising, holding your hand out with a tin cup in it, if you will. Well, at the very end of those class notes, we try to discuss the course as a whole, to bring it to a close, to look at the kind of challenges that the American political system is facing these days, early in the second presidential term of Donald Trump. I do the best I can, everybody, to keep that up to date. It's hard to get it right up to the minute, but I hope there's some food for thought there that is worthwhile for you. All right, everybody, for the exam then, the format will be the same as the other exams, not comprehensive. The material is Units 7 and 8. So look closely at the Units 7 and 8 class notes. And also 4 articles we've asked you to look at. One of them has to do with Congress and DOGE, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. And what the author says in that article is that DOGE might not have been necessary if Congress had done a better job of oversight. Some people say members of Congress have 3 jobs. Representation, which means things like constituent service, legislation, and oversight. And oversight means a kind of auditing process by which you go back and look at how the various agencies spent the money that you appropriated to them. Okay. See what the author of that article says about Congress and its auditing and oversight function. Does he think Congress has been doing a good job at that or not? Now, another piece on Congress has to do with the so-called Republican 5 families. There are at least 5 factions within the House Republican Conference, as they call it. The Democrats call theirs the caucus. In either case, that simply refers to the body of all the House Republicans or House Democrats. But among the Republicans, the authors of that piece mention 5 separate groups or caucuses or factions, if you will. One of which is open across party lines. Be sure to make note of which one that is. There is the Freedom Caucus, the Main Street Caucus, the Problem Solvers Caucus, and a couple of others. Look at what the authors say about the composition of each one and the implications of that for getting legislation passed. Remember, the Republicans have a very narrow majority and can barely afford to lose a vote. They can lose 1 or 2 votes perhaps and still get legislation passed. So that's important to getting the big beautiful bill passed. Then a couple of pieces about the Supreme Court. One of them discusses the pressure that President Trump is trying to exert on the Supreme Court and how Chief Justice Roberts in particular is trying to deal with that. Look at what the president has said about the court. Has the president been happy with the court or not? I think he's been happy in some cases, but in many other cases not with the Supreme Court nor the judiciary as a whole. So how is the Supreme Court reacting in response to that? Then finally we have an article by Adam Liptak from the New York Times about a case that has just been argued before the court and may even be decided with the decision announced before we take our exam. I don't know. It hasn't been announced yet. Mahmoud versus Taylor. This is and you'll find the title of that case mentioned at the very end of the article, or near the end. This case came from Montgomery County, Maryland, and it involves the use of books with LGBT themes in classrooms and in school libraries. Some parents were upset with that. So look and see what they want to do and how the Supreme Court might respond to that. Okay. All right, everybody. So expect 15 or so items on those 4 articles. The rest will come from the class notes for Units 7 and 8. All day Friday, 50 multiple choice and true-false items. Okay, take it anytime Friday. You'll have 45 minutes once you begin. Discussion Monday and Tuesday, the 23rd and 24th. Papers due Thursday the 26th, the exam Friday the 27th, grades due Monday the 30th, 1 week from tomorrow, as I'm speaking to you now on Sunday evening the 22nd. So please go ahead and be sure you can access those articles. Contact me with any problems, questions, or issues through the course website or at david.cole@opsu.edu. 3 people need to make up exams. Please contact me about making up those exams. Otherwise, everybody study hard, take it easy. I hope this has been a beneficial, profitable, eye-opening experience for you over these short 7 weeks, the first 7-week summer term for 2025. Good luck. Hope everybody will make it through the course in a satisfactory way. Contact me if I can be of help in any way. I hope it's been a good experience for you this summer 2025.